Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025, and this is the new era of the Ango Show Live. My name is Ango, and in just a few minutes, we'll bring in our co host who will be joining us remotely. On the Ango Show Live, there is going to be a lot of chatter about wrestling news and things that have happened this week on a daily basis of professional wrestling. I ask that you guys watch the show, enjoy the show, and engage in the show. Support the show. Click like, drop a super chat. The super chat goal is active. And at the end of the show, we will go through all of the super chats one by one and have a deep dive. Now, this show will continue to be interactive like previous live streams, but also we are going to engage in heavy discussions surrounding the latest stories. And trust me when I tell you guys, there has been some big gems that have been released. If there are any streaming issues or anything like that, we are still trying to get the kinks out of the way. But as of right now, it looks like it's all working. Your support is appreciated. And as you guys can see, we have a variety of topics lined up. We're going to talk about WWE Evolution 2 plans. Today, we're also going to be discussing a major announcement that was dropped by WWE, which I think is going to ruffle some feathers. I look very much forward to engaging in that conversation. Not only that, we are going to talk about Double or Nothing. Some AEW stars are banged up from the show. And we got to talk about WWE spoiling AAA and what that means for Alberto Del Rio. Now, joining us live here on the Ango Show, we have fan favorite of the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Billy TKO.
Yo, what is going on, everybody? I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody had a wonderful Memorial Day and enjoyed their holiday. Ango, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me, Billy. Now, today we obviously have a variety of things to discuss, but I want to kick things off with something very interesting. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but if you guys have been unaware, there has been some unfortunate news that was released this past weekend regarding Jim Ross. And I want to talk about this. Jim Ross, obviously longtime legendary WWE commentator, he did reveal that he is set to undergo surgery today. And he actually doesn't even plan on retiring from announcing, but he was diagnosed with cancer. He actually revealed this on Grilling JR. His surgery is scheduled for today, Tuesday, May 27th. Basically, this guy has been dealing with tons of health issues throughout the last few years. Probably the biggest reason as to why we haven't seen him, consistently on AEW television. So just from the Angle Show Live to Jim Ross, we want to send you our well wishes and best of luck with that. I think the perfect way to start off today's episode is with WWE's major announcement. Billy, today WWE had announced that the Great American Bash will be taking place on July 12th. They will be going head to head with AEW All In. Now, this is a very big news story because WWE has been counter programming AEW a lot. A lot of fans feel as if WWE has essentially, they don't say that AEW is competition. They try to diminish AEW as a competitor, and then obviously WWE has these reactionary shows. I want to take a look at today's announcement, and then we'll hear from you. WWE announced State Farm Arena is to host Saturday night's main event on Saturday, July 12th, and Evolution on Sunday, July 13th. The Great American Bash is to emanate from Center Stage Theater on the afternoon of Saturday, July 12th. Now, Center Stage is a historical a venue. There's been plenty of great wrestling shows that have taken place there. But with WWE's announcement, a lot of people feel like this is WWE being reactionary to what AEW is doing. And this is a very interesting announcement because Saturday night's main event, Evolution, Great American Bash, this is a triple threat package, very similar to what we just saw this past weekend with NXT Battleground, Saturday night's main event, and then Raw as well. What is your reaction to when you see WWE making some sort of announcement like this, especially when it competes head to head with AEW on the biggest show of their year?
Well, let's be real here. WWE, they are aware of everything that AEW does. They know everything that AEW has going on, and I think we can say the exact same about AEW. So when I see this, I don't really feel any shock. I know some people want to be reactionary towards the situation, but truth be told, WWE has been known for this. And here's the thing, right? WWE, we're allowed to call petty. And in times like these, I definitely feel that it can be somewhat petty. At the end of the day, they are a business and they're running their business however they so please. But the truth of the matter that I think is that AEW, they've made themselves competition. That's what they are. And WWE, has never played lightly when it comes to people calling themselves competition. I mean, we've seen it in the past numerous times. So this is WWE just necessarily being reactionary to something that they will always be reactionary towards. So if you think that, oh, this will be the last time that something like this happens, it won't be. WWE will continue to do stuff like this under the circumstance that AEW still exists. They're always going to try to counter program and make you pick their product over AEW's. That's just the truth about it. But definitely interested to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting parts of this particular story, when you look at WWE and particularly what they have been doing with AEW since the minute AEW has arrived, is they've kept tabs on everything that is happening in this company, right? Like it is very clear that WWE pays attention to AEW. It's very clear that WWE is, not only are they paying attention, but I think reactionary is the right word. Like I genuinely believe WWE has found ways to learn what the trends are in professional wrestling because of AEW, and therefore they're able to react and respond accordingly. And I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this particular news story is the fact that Great American Bash likely isn't going to put a massive dent on AEW's growth. But AEW doesn't necessarily have a certain level of momentum that is completely groundbreaking for them. It's definitely been a time period where things have cooled off quite a bit. And I think one of the things that has intrigued me most is like we saw with Battleground. I personally watched Battleground and I thought Battleground was an exceptional show. And I chose to watch Battleground before Double or Nothing. And it's whether or not it brings a big dent to AEW. I definitely think I think it definitely gets people talking less about AEW. Whereas if they were to do their own thing separately, then if they just had AEW do their own day, everybody would be talking about AEW. But for the fact that social media exists and trending topics and all of these things, when WWE does something, for example, like Trick Williams winning the TNA Championship, yes, everybody could be talking about Hangman Page if that weren't the case. But now you have a mixed conversation, and I think WWE, this is where I become a little bit annoyed because I think you use the word petty, right?
Yeah.
WWE WWE is absolutely petty. There's no denying it. But wrestling fans have wanted competition for the longest time. And I think one of the things that have bothered me is seeing the people's reaction to when WWE is treating AEW like a competitor. Because WWE doing Evolution, Saturday Night's Main Event, and Great American Bash for an entire weekend, that sets the precedence that WWE understands people are interested in AEW. And if they could get people talking less about AEW, it hurts AEW. But this is what wrestling fans have called for. People don't want WWE to monopolize, right? They want WWE to exist. Well, if you want WWE to exist and you want AEW to exist, the reality is that you have to live with the idea and the notion that WWE will do everything to stop you. So today's news doesn't really shock me. Do I really think it's petty? Honestly, I don't agree with you. I don't. I don't think it's petty. I think that's what businesses should do. But the best part about this is the fact that WWE can inadvertently cause AEW to step up their game, which is important. If WWE is counter programming AEW, Tony Khan's first initial reaction should be to improve. And if AEW is killing it, what should it do? It should force WWE to improve. And I think Triple H has always had that chip on his shoulder because of NXT losing to AEW. So at the end of the day, who wins here? The wrestling fans. You get two companies with a lot of money trying to actually step up their game.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I do. And when it comes down to like pettiness, I need people to understand, like, kind of like you said a moment ago, business at the end of the day will always be business, and that will always take precedence over everything else, whether that be the fan, whether that be the person buying the ticket, whatever. Business will always take that precedence. But to say that something like this is not necessarily petty, I do think is crazy, because I hear you on one end, saying like, oh, it requires AEW to potentially step up their game, et cetera, et cetera. I hear you on that. And while I do agree, I do think at the end of the day, regardless, they were going to do these shows no matter what. And people enjoy AEW. People enjoy WWE. So they will choose what they want to watch. The problem with it is like, Does that necessarily need to be the case? Does WWE have to do this, especially on their biggest stage, right? All In is their biggest stage. It is their quote-unquote WrestleMania. So it's just kind of interesting to see. I do think with what you said, though, about them stepping up the game, that is always nice to see. But regardless of the fact, I'm just not sure if we should be doing it on that important day, because AEW doesn't necessarily counter on WrestleMania. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, do you have to do it here? It's just interesting.
Well, I think you can make the argument that AEW more than likely would probably get dominated by WWE on WrestleMania. So it would be a very, very dumb business decision in terms of the financial aspect of it, which I think with WWE, again, and I think this is probably a big thing that people don't really often talk about, but I do think WWE has kind of found themselves in a situation where like they could lose money if they want, right? Like WWE could lose money, but NXT has its own niche audience. NXT is going to have their own people watching anyways. People who watch NXT are going to choose NXT. Now, one counter argument that I will ask you, and really this is where I find the most interest, right? Why hasn't Peacock stepped up? And I say this because if WWE was impacted by AEW in the slightest, then I feel like Peacock would step up. But I do think there is, to a certain extent, a conversation that needs to be had. Well, if AEW is this big threat to WWE, then maybe Peacock would also step in and say, hey, we don't want you guys going head to head with AEW for their biggest event. Now, what does that tell you? If Peacock hasn't done that, then obviously they are satisfied with whatever NXT is doing when they're counter programming.
Well, that's exactly. I mean, I think you just kind of answered the question yourself. Peacock trusts WWE at the end of the day. I think we're all well aware of that. You know what I mean? Peacock, they signed this deal, or WWE signed this deal with Peacock, years ago. So Peacock has really no other choice but to trust the vision of WWE. I mean, they could go in and potentially say like, oh yeah, like, hey, we don't like that you do this. But at the end of the day, Peacock is no different than any other organization, whether that be Netflix or Max or whatever your streaming service. It's no different. At the end of the day, they're going to trust the person that they're with, right? So this is them putting that trust in WWE. So no, they're not going to say anything, and they're going to look at it from a business standpoint. I'm coming at a fan's perspective of I dislike the fact that I have to choose whether or not, and granted, I have my channel and we do our thing over there, and I covered Battleground this weekend instead of Double or Nothing, but I would have liked to have been able to cover them both. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, as a fan, it gets a little tough sometimes where people have to choose, and I think we have to look at it from that perspective. And again, this is like the WWE and AEW. This is both of their problems, right? As businesses, as everything like that, they're always making people choose. And I'm not sure if I, as a fan, can get behind that.
That's an interesting point. From a content creator standpoint, I do agree that having them on the same day can make things tricky. I think a lot of wrestling viewers would probably argue the opposite, but I think when it comes to, especially for you doing watch-alongs, obviously that is tricky. Now, I do like the idea of head-to-head for the simple fact that I typically, in most case scenarios, I do the 2-monitor setup. So I watch both side by side, and I find that to be a unique experience. Obviously, not everybody can do that, and that's where you really got to test your loyalty. And I do think maybe AEW has kind of found themselves in a position where, unfortunately, they've kind of lost the trust of their audience for a while, and they're trying to get it back. And I think that's why WWE continues to do this too. Had AEW not lost momentum, had they not gone through the CM Punk drama, I definitely believe WWE would probably kind of just let them kill themselves, like in terms of a business sense. Like I think WWE would just kind of let them be detrimental to their own organization. However, it is true, AEW is, from a social media standpoint, not from a business standpoint, but from a social media standpoint, they are starting to get some more favorability again. So this is WWE's way of saying, well, hold on, we could put a halt on that, because now you got to imagine Evolution is, the same weekend. Saturday night's main event is the same weekend. You're doing this package where WWE is selling tickets for all 3 events. You're able to go to all 3 events. There's a lot of value in that. And I think that's where WWE has kind of been smart to say, hey, listen, we are aware of what is being said about AEW currently as it stands. They are starting to get a little bit more favorability, and we're going to continue to do what we do because it will keep people talking less and less. Now, of course, there is some potential risk with this, and I want to make this very clear from the beginning. If you are going to counter program, you got to be putting out some really good content. Like the good thing for WWE Battleground was, there was a lot of positive comments about Stephanie and Jordan and Oba Femi and Miles Bourne, Trick Williams and Joe Hendry. Like there was a lot of positive talk about Battleground at a time where there was also a lot of positive talk about Double or Nothing. So for WWE, if they're going to do NXT Great American Bash, you have to come out swinging. And this also means WWE has to be very careful here. You maybe some title changes, maybe some surprises. You have the partnership with TNA, you have the partnership with Pro Wrestling Noah. Utilize those things, because if you are trying to put a little bit of a dent into All In, you're going to have to come out swinging. And this is the big thing too that we haven't necessarily discussed. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but it's not like the All In tickets are impressive right now. The ticket sales, they're really not that impressive. They are struggling. We still have time. They could probably get, more tickets sold, but I do think that has to be part of the conversation too, is because Atlanta is not in Texas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People aren't, I don't genuinely believe for a second there is going to be a lot of tourism for people to go to Atlanta. There will be a lot of tourism for people to go to Texas for All In, right? So that is one thing that does have to get mentioned. I do think to a certain extent, people who are going to NXT will naturally just go to NXT and not watch AEW.
For sure.
And with this, if WWE were to go to Texas and go head to head same night, that would be a far more interesting conversation.
Yeah, that would make this conversation just a tad bit more interesting if they'd go to Texas. But
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, they still obviously have time for these ticket sales. Just to kind of like end this off, I think regardless of the fact, All In will be fine, because you made a really good point talking about the people that are just going to watch NXT are going to choose NXT. That's true. That is very true. And the same applies for the people who watch AEW. The people who want to watch AEW are going to tune in to AEW. Now, the difference is the people like me, right? Do I make that decision to, hey, maybe I'll watch, the Great American Bash over All In. That's where it gets a little tricky. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, for me, I'd probably choose All In over the Great American Bash. But again, it kind of leaves that low-hanging fruit of being like, man, like I'm missing out on something because something else is happening currently. And that is just never any fun.
Yeah, I understand that. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, the head-to-head stuff, some people are in favor of it, some people aren't. But I do want people to remind themselves that this is what they wanted. You don't want WWE to monopolize the business, and you want a competitor to come out. WWE actually, I would say, doesn't have as much to prove as AEW does.
No,
WWE
not.
has, WWE definitely has their audience, and I think that part is, what's said is their business is hot. We all know this. We can all acknowledge this. AEW is the company that has to prove themselves. And until they do, WWE is going to continue. And honestly, even when they do prove themselves to be a legitimate company, I don't think they're quite there yet. I think they've made a lot of groundbreaking mistakes that have hurt them in the process. The good news for AEW is the fact that they do have somebody who is naturally invested in wrestling. He genuinely loves the business. And so, Tony Khan's comments at Double or Nothing, which I'm going to praise openly for a second. When you look at what Tony Khan said about Jim Crockett Promotions the first time, and then this time where he answered the same question, sort of, he was much more professional. And I think that kind of shows you where Tony Khan's head is at. He is feeling very comfortable and confident about his product these days, which is a good sign that maybe Tony Khan is going to develop a little bit better of these press scrums, where he answers questions a little bit more professionally. Because in the past, that was always a thing that rubbed people off. It's like, okay, you are getting counter programmed and you're acting like a maniac. And this time it's a very different approach. So I look forward to seeing how this all transitions, as time goes on. Now, with that being said, I do want to turn our attention to another topic.
Yep.
And this is a very interesting story because WWE did something very interesting on WWE Raw. And they announced Vikingo versus Chad Gable for Worlds Collide for the AAA Mega Championship. Now, for those who are unaware, they show the graphic and it shows that the AAA Mega Championship is on the line, and they have inadvertently spoiled what is to come this weekend. For those who don't know what is to come this weekend, WWE has made the decision to just completely spoil this outright. This is where things get very funny because El Patron is doing a TV taping with Vikingo this weekend for the AAA Mega Championship. And this means that WWE is, in fact, going to have Alberto Del Rio drop the belt. Now, with that being said, this is a very big conversation that I think, genuinely speaking, I think a lot of people are kind of annoyed about this, right? I think some people are annoyed about the fact that WWE has spoiled this, but I also think WWE just genuinely doesn't care. And that is largely due to the fact that truth is they probably just want to move on from Alberto Del Rio. So Alberto El Patron, formerly known as Alberto Del Rio, there's been a lot of talk about this guy coming into the WWE as part of AAA. A lot of people were concerned when they heard the news that WWE has, integrated his contract into the company. Now it sounds like WWE not only spoiling AAA shows that they don't care about spoiling the match, but I think it also is a clear indicator that they no longer care about Alberto El Patron. So with that being said, Billy, when you hear the news that WWE spoils this and Chad Gable will main event Worlds Collide for the AAA Mega Championship, I just have to know, what is your reaction to that?
I mean, number one, it's funny, and it's everything that we kind of expected to happen. I mean, WWE was never going to bring Alberto Del Rio, or in AAA, Alberto El Patron. They were never going to bring him into the company. Everything that he dealt with prior to, I'm not going to speak on, but I will say, like, it was a lot. And WWE, I can imagine, just didn't want anything like that a part of their show. And rightfully so, right? They're allowed to have that. They're allowed to think a certain way, and ultimately, we talked about it numerous times about Vikingo having a match at Worlds Collide with that belt. Ultimately, he should have always been the winner. It's just funny that they, just the nonchalant of I don't care. Now, it was funny because you texted it to me, actually, and I had no idea that I was watching Raw live, and just it's so funny how easily you can miss the fine print, right? Because at just like a standard glance, I'm just looking at Vikingo and Chad Gable and being like, oh my goodness, like this is going to be amazing. You know what I mean? But when you really look at the fine print, you see it in the middle, you're like, oh wait, well, he's not the AAA Mega Champion. And I have to sit there and I have to be like, oh, well, the guy who is the champion right now is Alberto El Patron, and they have this TV taping, so I have to put two and two together that, hey, WWE just spoiled what is happening. So it's definitely really funny, man. But overall, it doesn't shock me. I mean, we all kind of seen this coming, right? It's just one of those things where you look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, we get it. And just can't wait for this match between Vikingo and Chad Gable.
WWE hates Alberto Del Rio. I mean, I think that's the thing that people need to realize at this point. I think this is a clear indicator that WWE does not like him, because for them to spoil a match for AAA and they just completely disregard that, and they're already advertising Vikingo and Chad Gable for the Mega Championship, literally tells you that they have no plans for Del Rio in the future whatsoever. Now, the good news here, though, is because we obviously have to mention this, Paige is a free agent. And obviously, there's a lot of talk about the history of Alberto Del Rio and Paige. You have to wonder, with Evolution too, are they going to have Paige come back? Because WWE knows that weekend they have to be explosive. That is a very big weekend for them. And if they have Paige come back into the company, that's also another big thing for them. But at the same time, too, how awkward would it be if they brought back Paige? Oh, and then, by the way, they bring back Del Rio. So that is one thing that needs to be said. I think WWE's clear priorities here is Vikingo and Chad Gable. This is the reason why Vikingo and Chad Gable are seen on WWE Raw. But this is also another reason why WWE is trying to already build up Del Vikingo. El Heel Del Vikingo is literally being branded as the AAA champion, and he hasn't even won the belt yet. Which that's crazy to me.
But yeah, no, very, very fun spoiler to me.
One thing that I absolutely loved about this spoiler that was really cool is the fact that Chad Gable and Vikingo have been announced for the main event. So the main event of Worlds Collide is literally for the Mega Championship for a belt that is not even changed hands yet. And I think that's like the best part is like WWE just wants you to know that Vikingo is so great. They had him show up at the AAA announcement. They have him show up on Raw. They have him show up during the weekend for Battleground or Saturday night's main event and all this stuff, right? Like they have him present. They're putting him as a focal point. And then not only that, but Del Rio hasn't dropped the belt to him. So that just goes to show you that WWE prioritizes Vikingo in ways where they are willing to inadvertently ruin their own product because WWE owns AAA. Del Rio is a draw in Mexico. People do buy tickets to watch him. However, in America, it is very clear that the fans are not on his side. And I think WWE has also made it clear in the past, like he's not coming back. And Del Rio was outspoken in the past saying that he would come back. So naturally, I think people kind of looked at this. They're like, oh my God, we're so scared. Del Rio is part of AAA. They brought back his contract. No, WWE is putting their foot down. And I think this was the right call. Whether or not WWE knows it, whether or not the fans in Mexico know this, Alberto Del Rio does not bring any sort of value to the WWE product in 2025. And I don't think he'll bring any value to Worlds Collide, which is also a reason why he is not on the promotional material.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Crazy to think about. But with that being said, Billy, I want to turn our attention to another topic. And this topic specifically is one that is very interesting to me because WWE Evolution 2 have had some plans that have leaked. And these plans that have leaked is one that's kind of throwing people off because of the fact that Evolution 2 was just recently announced. WWE still hasn't necessarily built this story, on TV just yet. We are still waiting to see kind of what happens and what goes on. But I think we need to have a conversation about these plans. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, Evolution 2, according to Corey Hayes of PWN, it looks like they are going to be having a match between Bayley and Becky Lynch. But the problem with this is that WWE has also revealed for Money in the Bank, Becky Lynch will go up against Lyra Valkyria. And this is where things get very shaky because that's for the Intercontinental Championship. So you hear the news, WWE is planning Bayley versus Becky. Now you have to wonder, what are they going to do here with Lyra and Becky? What's this? How do you see this going down, bro?
Well, so hearing this, it makes me think, number one, that WWE is going to continue the run with Lyra Valkyria as champion, which rightfully so. I think Lyra Valkyria has been a great Intercontinental Champion. I think she has done very, very well by that belt, especially, with this storyline with Becky Lynch. It's brought her to prominence. It's definitely brought her up in front of that mainstream audience when it comes to Raw, SmackDown, being in front of that audience. So my guess here is that WWE will, in fact, keep that title on Lyra Valkyria over Becky Lynch. And, in fact, I do think that Becky Lynch will be costed this match by Bayley, and I think that's how they'll continue that story, which ultimately makes sense. Now, I know a lot of people had speculated, oh, maybe there's a chance that they do a triple threat match at Evolution, or, Bayley just ends up, helping Becky, or just something along those lines. But ultimately, I think it is just going to be one of those simple things where Bayley goes out of her way, gets involved in this match, helps Lyra at the end of the day. It's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, so let me ask you, when you hear the news that Bayley versus Becky could potentially be the plan, I think we also need to talk about Evolution 2 as a whole, right? Bayley, Becky, part of the Four Horsewomen. That's obviously a very interesting part of this potential storyline. But also, WWE really has to come out swinging for Evolution 2. This has to be their most insane thing ever, because you want to prove that women actually draw, you got to go out there with the most loaded card. The rumor is 6 to 7 matches. There's rumor that they're going to have a battle royal of some sort. Now, the original Evolution had the Mae Young Classic. That's obviously not a factor this year. What are some other things that you want to see as part of Evolution 2?
Well, I think obviously I want to see, Tiffany Stratton on the card. I definitely want to see that WWE Women's Championship defended. Want to see the Women's World Championship defended. I would like some stipulation added to these matches. I would like there to be like a ladder match of some sort, really adding stipulation to these women's matches to really set them apart and diversify them a little bit more inside of the ring, rather than just having them go head up one-on-one. No, do what you do. Put a stipulation, if Tiffany and, let's say, just for an example, Charlotte Flair, if their feud requires something like a ladder match, like it's like, this is the only way that we're going to reach some kind of resolution here, then do it. You know what I mean? If you need to have a street fight between Becky and Bayley, do it. If it requires that, don't be afraid to not pull that trigger and actually do that, because I think that will make the show that much more fun. It needs to be bigger than what the last one was, right? That is going to be the ultimate goal here, is to make it bigger than what the first one was, to make it more exciting. And I think the best way to do that is treat it as another pay-per-view that you would any other pay-per-view. Just the difference is this is to showcase the women, showcase them, let them do amazing in those kind of matches. Put those stipulations on there. I would love to see it.
Now, one thing I want to actually throw up on the screen here is an image that is floating around social media. And this is an image that includes, on the grand scheme of things, you could see the Iconics are there. You can see some other professional wrestlers on the screen. But if you take a look at this image, there's an image floating around with Mariah May training with Tyler Breeze inside the ring. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, Mariah May was not part of WWE at all this weekend, and she also wasn't part of Double or Nothing. AEW has simply ignored her from the storyline between Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa. And as we talk about Evolution 2 and some of the plans that are happening, I have to ask you, without knowing the contract status of Mariah May, whether she's actually free and clear of AEW or not, or whether she will be in time for Evolution 2, do you think Mariah May, if the contract allows her to, if she's out of her contract, do you think Mariah May should debut at Evolution 2?
I think that, okay, so we talk about setting precedents and we talk about making something big, right? Having a person like Mariah May, who the IWC is very, very familiar with, I think would, number one, create shock status through the Twitter world or just whatever, right? I think it would bring that shock status. Now, would I like to see it here? I would be okay with it, but I do think other people may have problems with it. At the end of the day, again, kind of like you said a moment ago, not knowing the contract status, I guess the biggest thing is the question of, does it happen? Is that actually something that people can put out there and be like, oh yeah, there's a chance that this happens? I just don't know off the top of my head, but I would love, overall, just would love to see Mariah May in the WWE. It sucks that, after everything that she did with Toni Storm and AEW, there's been no extra plans for her. I do find that to be very crazy. I also think she was one of those people that AEW needed to keep close to them, as she was very, very important. She literally just had one of the best feuds, if not the best feud, in AEW with Toni Storm, really helping move 2024 into 2025 and things of that nature. So it's just going to be interesting to see. But I think if you want to have one of those big moments for the next Evolution, to say, hey, look at what happened here, you never know what to expect here, I think you do something like that and bring in a Mariah May, have her debut on the show. Now, again, whether she goes to NXT, Raw, SmackDown, doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, that is how you create a big moment.
I think if WWE really wants to make Evolution 2 a big event, you have to have Mariah May debut. If she is free and clear and able to debut at Evolution 2, that's when you do it. You do a very big surprise debut. Look, WWE understands exactly what's at play here. Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm is a fascinating story, and it's a fun match, and it was great at Double or Nothing. But the problem is, Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm's story is due to the fact that Mariah May was heavily featured, and AEW has completely no-sold her as if she was never there.
Yeah.
And so to me, I see this, and I think WWE understands, hey, one of the things that did catch fire outside of our company is Mariah May involvement with Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm. We're going to make a big splash. Have her show up at Evolution 2 if it is possible and send her straight to the main roster. You don't need to put her in NXT. She's good enough to be on the main roster. Literally, if anybody doesn't know who she is, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you will find success with her. She will make it work. And really, I think that needs to be said. Like, when it comes to Evolution and everything that we have seen, like with WWE, like the idea of this all women's event, right? You could do Bailey and Becky. You can do a battle royal. You can do all of these things. But what are you going to do outside of this event that really gets people hooked on the women's division? And so, yes, you have women that you can bring in from Marigold. You have women that you could bring in, obviously, from NXT or TNA. But what's like the one thing after this that you want to benefit from? Having a star that's been created or that you're creating and getting people involved in loving them. And I think the person that everybody could expect that from is Mariah May. She's marketable, great performer, great promo, great wrestler. This is somebody who I think genuinely comes into WWE and brings like this whole, she is the WWE. Like, she is far more WWE than AEW. And so if you want to make a big statement at this event and you want to try to draw more tickets and more draws to women's wrestling, that's how you end the show. Mariah May randomly shows up. Like, there's a million ways to do it. But I think Evolution too, it's a tricky situation for them. I think WWE really has to come out swinging. You really have to have a star-studded show, and then you got to have a couple surprises. And yes, you could bring in Paige, right? Paige would be a great return. Nikki Bella Twins, I think would be a great thing. But what's your big thing after that? Who is going to be that full-time player that shows up and really starts to run through the women's division? Now, if the time zones of everything were different, I think it would be a very unique situation if we were talking about Tiffany Stratton getting called up. But she got called up before and has been running through the women's division.
Correct.
So who's that next person? I think it's got to be Mariah May.
I 100% agree with you. I do think that she fits that WWE mold. I think she is branded for WWE. I think they will do perfectly fine with her. And like you said, just creating that big splash. Ango, we do not disagree here. We agree 1,000%. This one's pretty simple. You bring her in. You let that be a big splash factor. Again, kind of like I talked about. You know, you put on those stipulation matches. You make these things more fun. And then to give that at the end of the show, you know, bringing back Paige. There are things in play that make this show potentially very, very must-see TV, right? That's what we all look forward to, is must-see TV. And I think you do, with all three of those things potentially being a factor, all four, bringing back Nikki Bella, doing stuff like that, all four of those play a key factor in how this show becomes a huge deal. And that's what WWE needs.
So now I would like to beg the question, and there's a reason why I brought up Mariah May right after Bailey and Becky. Because of the fact that WWE has an interesting storyline going on between Lyra and Becky. Is there a chance that maybe down the line, Lyra Valkyria actually defeats Becky at Money in the Bank thanks to Bailey? Is there a chance that maybe we could see Becky's new protege? Could that be Mariah May? Is this something where we can actually have Becky bring in Mariah May and kind of be, they would be a heel duo? You know, this would kind of be a way for the WWE universe to warm up to Becky Lynch. Do you think maybe something like that could go down, and then perhaps maybe at SummerSlam or something like that, we could get Becky and Mariah May versus Bailey and Lyra? Is this something that maybe we could see?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the world of WWE is fun, right? Because we can fantasy book things like this. I do see a potential world where Mariah May could join Becky Lynch, and the reason why is strictly this. Those two together, like you said, warming up to the crowd. I think that is going to be a major factor, because we've seen it numerous times with AEW stars coming in. You know, that mainstream audience that Raw and SmackDown get, they don't always pop, you know, at like, you know, for something like you and I would know about AEW. The mainstream audience might not necessarily pop to something like that. And again, it goes down to the superstars too, having to get used to them, having to know them more. But those two together, I think, would just be fun. It is no different than, I mean, let's talk of any other faction, right? Evolution, you know, bringing in somebody to be that protege, to learn from, to ultimately have somebody turn, which is going to make them a bigger star at the end of the day. Ultimately, Mariah May with Becky Lynch becomes a bigger star because of the story afterwards. So I do 100% see a world where those two pair up, they become a team, Like you said, Lyra and Bailey potentially at SummerSlam. Very simple booking. I don't think you have to think too much about it. I do love the idea of it, though, and I think just overall love the idea of Mariah May being in the WWE.
Yeah, very fair point. I think WWE is not dumb, right? Like
No.
WWE knows, like deep down inside, people will know who Mariah May is, but I think they also need to realize very quickly, like she is still going to be relatively new to the WWE universe. So the fact that Mariah May is in this picture, she's training in the ring with Tyler Breeze. She's off of AEW television. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that AEW is ignoring her, they're not even like they're basically erasing her from history to a certain extent. I think it's very clear that Mariah May becomes a WWE superstar. And not only that, I think WWE naturally, yes, they could put her in NXT and maybe she could get a little bit more experience. But I think if they have her debut at Evolution 2, if that is possible, if she is free and clear from her contract and she's able to be there and WWE debuts her, and then we get her to align with Becky, I think that's a recipe for long-term success. Because the one thing that nobody is talking about is the fact that Mariah May coming in as a heel would be great, but long term, it's eventually going to be as a maybe as a very big baby face. So if the contract is free and clear, I have Mariah May show up at Evolution 2. I have her align with Becky. And that's perfect. Becky versus Bailey, and that's how Mariah May makes her debut, something of that nature. It's a complete game changer for Mariah May. It forces her to be on the main roster in a very big storyline. And I know some people might not agree that this could happen, but just keep in mind, Triple H is not scared to throw out somebody on main roster pay-per-views that people are unaware of, because we saw what happened when Damage Control was formed. We saw that was a massive surprise
Mm-hmm.
with Bailey bringing out Dakota Kai and Io Shirai, who eventually became Io Sky. So just keep that in mind. It wouldn't be like this weird thing if Triple H did it. Triple H knows exactly what he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
and by association, that automatically makes Mariah May a big deal.
Association is everything. I agree 100%.
And that is a very, very interesting segue, because that's going to bring us to our next topic, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Ango Show Live, which, by the way, thank you to everybody who is watching the show live here exclusively on YouTube. Several hundred people watching the show live. We will get to our super chats in just a little bit, but I want to turn our attention to another story. And this one is one that I feel like it's kind of expected when you see the kind of matches they put on. But multiple AEW stars are banged up after AEW Double or Nothing. Now, obviously, this is a very big conversation because some people will talk about whether or not AEW is safe. This is going to be a very fascinating topic. But for those who don't know, I'm going to read the news to you guys. AEW might be without a lot of people. So the Wrestling Observer has revealed that both Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, are banged up from the match. Also, multiple other people are banged up from AEW. Some people are suspecting that maybe Wheeler Yuta, John Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, pretty much everybody who was in Anarchy in the Arena is essentially banged up. Katsuyori Shibata also appears to be somewhat hurt. A lot of people took some big bumps at Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing was a show that had a lot of great matches. Ricochet and Mark Briscoe obviously going to the extreme. This is one of those events where I think AEW, while I have made it very clear in my own personal content, I do genuinely believe that Battleground was the better show. I do think AEW Double or Nothing had the better matches. However, having better matches also means that people are going to get hurt. So now this is a conversation, Billy, where I have to just ask you, is it worth it?
Yeah, so, okay. Hear me out, right? It's so funny, right? Because we all get excited for the stipulation matches. They are fun until you actually think about the brutality of these matches. And hearing that the Young Bucks are banged up, Wheeler Yuta being banged up, Claudio Castagnoli being banged up, John Moxley, literally everybody who was a part of that match, does not shock me in the slightest, because if you go back and look at the violence of this match, there's no way any amount of, or no human can take this amount of suffering, right? Because, I mean, we've seen a spot where Swerve got his tongue stapled. Like, yeah, that hurts. That's real life. That's not fun. Now, here's the thing. I understand that some people do enjoy this kind of pro wrestling. Some people can get behind this type of stuff. Me, on the other hand, it is not for me. It is not something that I very much enjoy, seeing the sick, gross stuff on my TV. Now, again, watch your wrestling, enjoy what you enjoy. I'm not naive to say that the match was really good. Not naive to that. At the end of the day, it's just not for me, right? So I look at this and I say, yeah, I mean, this is something that you have to expect when these guys go out there and they put on what is an amazing match, by the way. And they're ultimately going to get hurt. People are going to get hurt. No body part can deal with that kind of, again, pain and suffering. It hurts at the end of the day. These guys, 30, 40, 20, 30, 40, however old, their body just can't always do that. I know if I went out there and do it, I'd be messed up. Again, I'm not a professional, so there is obviously a huge difference. But I just can't imagine any human being able to take that and be like, oh, yeah, I feel fine after.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting talking point because AEW, listen, I give them their props. Like, these match qualities are fantastic matches. I am on the record of saying this. It's to me, I feel like the gruesome, the blood, the gritty stuff, it's not my personal taste. And that's okay. Like, that's not my personal taste. Even, I've mentioned this before, even in WWE when I see it, or TNA, it's not my cup of tea. It's just naturally how I am as a person. It's not a big deal. I've gone to GCW shows. I tend to not really enjoy that kind of style. However, it is what makes AEW unique to WWE. Like, it makes them different. And I think with WWE, they use it sparingly, right? We saw Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest have an awesome cage match on Saturday night's main event, but we don't get those level of matches all the time, right? And I think you can make the argument too that was nothing compared to what we saw in Anarchy in the Arena. So, to me, it's just, I prefer it to be used more special, but that's just because I prefer not to see it really at all.
Right.
But of course, when it's used sparingly, it's okay.
Right.
I will say AEW plays the risk. They play the risk because that is the thing that makes them different. And for some people, it is a turnoff. I personally was not a big fan of ECW as a kid growing up. I was never a big fan of the Extreme Championship Wrestling type of, stuff like that. It's just a personal taste. But I do think for AEW, I don't actually want them to change this because this is what makes them unique. I remember very specifically watching AEW in the beginning. And, it was, I think it was Darby Allin versus Joey Janela. And I just remember seeing these guys doing crazy stuff. And I remember just distinctively thinking, like, this is cool, but it's not for me. But this is what makes AEW AEW. And I have to give AEW props for Double or Nothing. It felt like an AEW show. Yeah. It was long, like a typical AEW pay-per-view.
For sure, always.
It had its ups and downs, but the match quality was an AEW show. True and true, like true AEW vision.
Yes.
And when I see that AEW stars are banged up and I hear about these guys being injured, a lot of people's natural reaction is to say, no, this is dumb. Don't do that. But at the same time, too, this is what makes them them. And I think that is very important for AEW to understand. You have to do what makes you unique. Absolutely. Because that is going to be the differentiator to WWE. Do I think it helps them grow their business? In some ways, I think it could. And in some ways, I think it hurts. I think in some ways, it could be a turnoff to advertisers. In some ways, I think it could be a turnoff to, potential viewers. But at the end of the day, that is what's going to make them special. And I think when you look at Anarchy in the Arena, for example, one of my favorite parts about the match was, and this is the thing about Anarchy in the Arena that's great, there is so much stuff going on where they're switching through cameras. So you have Claudio doing some crazy stuff. You have Willow doing some crazy stuff. You got John Moxley and Swerve doing some crazy stuff. This is a match that is very good for retention, meaning there is so much happening at once, you are constantly drawn to the TV. Now, the risk of that is everybody is going to do something crazy to get that TV time and to get that reaction. However, this is what makes them them. And so I do have to say, like, as much as I'm not fond of the blood and guts and, what did Vince McMahon call it before? I think he said it was like mutilation or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, hearing that these people are hurt, it sucks because you don't want them to miss TV time, and that's the risk, right? You
Exactly.
run the risk of people getting hurt. You run the risk of all of that, which could, of course, it could hurt your ticket sales or viewership or whatever. However, at the end of the day, I think that risk, as long as they're all healthy and as long as they're all safe and they're being smart, I say keep doing it. Keep doing what makes you unique. Keep doing what makes you special, because at the end of the day, that was what AEW was founded on. It may not be my cup of tea. It may not be the thing that I enjoy the most, but it is the thing that makes you unique. And I think one final thing I need to mention regarding them specifically with the injuries, because this part is the thing that really does bother me.
Mhm.
The Young Bucks, hearing that they're banged up and they're hurt, right?
Yeah.
This is a tag team division that is struggling. We saw what happened with, of course, we saw what happened with, the Hurt Syndicate and the Sons of Texas, or whatever they're calling them, right?
Yeah.
This tag team division needs to get back on track. The way to do that is through the Young Bucks. So just that's one thing. If I'm Tony Khan, if I'm having some whispers in the ears of people, is, hey, this is your plan for after Double or Nothing. We need to keep you safe. We need to get this on the road. We need to fix this division. We need to fix this story. We have a major storyline here coming up. Like, yes, go do your thing, but also at the same time to try to be as risk-free as possible because of that. And I think that has to be said, because now if the Young Bucks are actually ultimately hurt and they're going to be kept off of TV, that hurts your tag team division. We need to get that tag team division back on track. People want to talk about All In, Christian and Edge going for the tag titles. Well, the better match for that is them against the Young Bucks, not against the Hurt Syndicate. So they got to do something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. That tag division is one that's been struggling, and you need to look at the Young Bucks as a way to get through, maneuver to make your tag team division just that much better. So, it is funky, putting them in a position like this where ultimately they get hurt very badly. They're banged up, could miss more TV time that they've already missed previously. I think just overall, you have to pay attention to the stories that you currently have going on. You have to pay attention to the things that people are critiquing, and you need to look at all of those factors and say, okay, maybe this isn't the best spot for somebody, we'll just use the Young Bucks, like the Young Bucks to be in right now, because I'm going to need them here soon, later down the line, to make something that I have going on elsewhere that much better. So yeah, I agree with you 100% on that factor.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating, man. People are gonna be like, "What, Ango? Why are you so fascinated?" I think I'm genuinely fascinated for the fact that I just seen them. They go out there, they put their bodies on the line, and obviously they know the risk to what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be the type of guy that wishes injuries upon wrestlers. I'm not that kind of guy. It doesn't matter what company you work for. It doesn't even matter if I hate your guts as a professional wrestler. I always wish for everybody to be in good health. And so when I see some of the lengths that people go through in AEW to put on a spectacle, they do a great job, and you just hope that they do it safely, right?
Yep.
I think one of the things that really kind of, it's a reminder, right? Professional wrestling to a lot of people might see it as, oh, it's scripted entertainment, it's fake, right? Like that's the big thing that people say on social media.
Always.
But the thing that really does need to be mentioned here, and I genuinely believe this with all of my heart, is that look at Zoe Stark. Freak accident, without weapons, without blood, without them going crazy lengths to do something. She was just doing a normal, spot off the rope. And like when you see this kind of stuff happen, it just goes to show you that anything can happen. So when somebody takes it a little bit more to the extreme, that's where it has to be kind of mentioned, like, hey, just kind of be cognizant of that. Be mindful of the fact that injuries can happen and there's a risk. AEW in a very particular way has kind of hurt themselves in ways because of the fact that people have gotten hurt from these kinds of matches. We have seen time and time again the more extreme risks that they take, sometimes people do get hurt. We saw this very specifically too, with who was it? It's not coming to me. It happened before where somebody got hurt in the match. It was Ring of Honor, Dante Martin. I think it was Dante Martin.
Yeah, and he got hurt very often too.
Yeah, so like, but you saw what happened. Private Party, obviously, like,
yep.
It really was detrimental to their tag team division. And then
that was the ladder spot, right?
Yeah,
okay.
So you see things like that happen though, and I think that's where it gets really, really hard. As a company, you kind of, or as a fan of a company, and you see these people going through an act where people could get hurt,
Yeah.
that's where it becomes a little bit more difficult for me. I think because it's like, well, the tag team division is struggling, and then okay, the Young Bucks are hurt, so now the guys who are really the draws of your tag team division can't be there. And then it's like, okay, well, Darby Allin went to go climb Mount Everest. Maybe they're pivoting, so they have Hangman Page win the Owen Cup, and maybe he'll dethrone Moxley, right?
Hmm.
Like, you have to be mindful of things because you are running a full-time show, a full-time business, and I think that thing is really the most important. So you got to protect your sport, but at the same time too, it's the risk of wrestling, and that's what's going to happen. So obviously, it is very unfortunate, but it is what happened. And AEW, I don't advise them to change up. I just think when people get hurt, people get banged up. I think you gotta just make sure you are fully aware of what is going to happen moving forward, for the simple fact that you don't want plans to change, because as it stands, you are getting momentum. You are starting to get a little bit more favorability. So now imagine you have to pull out your Will Ospreys, your
Hmm.
Hangman Pages, your Young Bucks, your John Moxleys, the people that actually are cared about through and through. And that's a really big part of the conversation. So
Yeah.
definitely interesting story there. But I think this is the perfect time for us to segue into what I would like to call the Super Chat Party. Ladies and gentlemen, the Super Chat Party is a new segment in which we will end our show reading all the Super Chats and engage with all the questions and comments that get read. If you guys would like to support the show, this would be the time for you guys to do so, because we will start reading Super Chats and start talking about them, and of course, shout you out for doing the Super Chats. Which we have quite a few. We still haven't hit the goal, so there is still time to hit the goal if you guys would like to help. But now would be a time to do so. And so, with that being said, we are going to start with our first super chat. Let's see. YouTube is kind of freezing for a second, so let's just go right over here. Give me a second.
Do you think?
As I said, guys, there might be some kinks. We're trying a new format, and this, this is going to be one of those little kinks that we have to deal with, but
Correct.
no big deal. We will get through them. So our first super chat of today's live stream comes from Phil. He dropped a $9.99. He says the constant counter programming is obvious if people don't think that WWE views AEW as competition. They're lying to themselves. It's not a coincidence, and it won't be the last time. Business is business. So one of the things that I really want to say here when it comes to WWE counter programming, I kind of made the point earlier, but it goes back, and I have to reiterate this. Billy, please tell me how you feel. If WWE doesn't counter program AEW, I think AEW continues to grow far more rapidly than if WWE does not counter program them. So as long as WWE is counter programming them with some really good content, that forces AEW to be really good, right or wrong.
Correct. I mean, at the end of the day, it is going to force AEW to better their program at the end of the day. But again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, it just as a viewer, as a watcher, it's never any fun. But I mean, competition's always good, right? It's why we watch sports. It's why we watch football. It's why we watch basketball. It's why we watch baseball. When competition exists, companies are better. That's just the true nature and the beauty of the beast, right? So yeah, no, I mean, like Phil said, business will always be business at the end of the day. They're going to continue to compete. WWE definitely views AEW as competition, obviously, given the fact that they're doing everything that they're doing. It's just ultimately going to be fun to watch, you know what I mean?
As long as they're coming out with their A game, I'm all for it, man.
Yeah.
That's how I genuinely feel about with them counter programming. I think AEW as well. If AEW sees that WWE, I think if AEW were in WWE's position, they would do the same exact thing. Honestly,
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that, and I think also the constant counter programming is going to inevitably allow fans to really. We'll see where fans' loyalty truly lies. If people are watching WWE programs and they're buying WWE's expensive tickets, I think that's a scenario in which WWE finds themselves. We're like, hey, we should keep doing this, right?
Yeah.
I think if AEW were in a position to do the same thing, they would as well. The one thing that we talked about earlier was ticket sales for AEW not necessarily being there just yet for All In. We'll see kind of how that changes, moving forward. But if WWE truly puts a dent on AEW's business, the good news for that will be the fact that WWE will have done something remarkable, which is really have won over the wrestling industry.
For sure.
The reason why that's controversial take is because right now a lot of people feel like WWE is dying. But if WWE is smoking AEW, it goes to show you that they're doing the right thing, which ultimately means for AEW, this is your time to step up, and you should feel threatened by it, but step up.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Jay Henry dropping a $4.99. He says, I am actually stoked for Evolution 2. It could be one of the best shows of actual wrestling of the year. That's a credit to WWE's women's division. It is absolutely on fire. I think we definitely need to have that conversation about their super chats. Their that's what we call a brain fart.
Right.
We need to absolutely have that conversation of their women's division and how it truly has evolved. Last year, I would say for the greater part of the year, I had been very critical of women's division, and I feel like they have made a lot of the right calls as of late. We're seeing firsthand what has happened with Lyra Valkyria. We've seen very firsthand of what has happened with Chelsea Green and now Zelina Vega. Evolution 2 could be the thing that really changes the narrative for WWE, but I will criticize WWE here. You're going to do an all-women's pay-per-view. You're also doing it right next to a Beyonce concert. That's a very hard competitive thing to do. Yeah. So that is one thing I just want to say very clearly to WWE. You got to pick your battles because people will go to Beyonce concert. And, you want to sell tickets to this event. You don't want this event to do poor ticket sales. You got to show that the women are a draw. We will see if WWE is able to do that. And I think that is one of the things that just it needs to be said. It absolutely needs to be said. So I definitely think that it's a very interesting point to that whole thing. One other thing too, as far as match quality goes, let them wrestle. No 4-minute matches, no 5-minute matches. You have to let them wrestle. If you do not let them wrestle, you will absolutely make a mistake. You have to let them wrestle. Yeah, that's very big. What's your thoughts on that, Billy?
Yeah, so one of my big things here is that Evolution, I think, kind of going back to the point that I made earlier, to make this show special, right? To make it intriguing, to make it fun, to make it exciting, you have to add those stipulation matches. I kind of stand firm on that because that is one thing that we don't often see with the women. That is something that they tend to shy away from. Yes, they do the triple threats, and yes, they have the championship matches, and yes, they do those things, but I think adding those stipulations to those matches can tend to make them more fun, right? They make them more exciting. Make your women look as good as the men, and they are, you know what I mean? Like, there's no denying that. But give them those fun opportunities. Give them the chance to go out there and, have that crazy ladder spot. You know what I mean? Let them create those moments. Let them be the best versions of themselves. And I think by doing so, that is the best way to make this an exciting show. It's already got hype around it because we all know what Evolution 1 was. So it's just going to be a lot of fun to see how this is all going to play out at the end of the day, because it does seem like WWE is going to put a lot of focus on this pay-per-view, or PLE. They're going to put a lot of focus on it, which is important to me. It's important to the people watching. Just give them those stipulations. I can't stress that enough. I want to see that out of the women really badly.
Stipulation. I definitely agree with your take on stipulations. And just food for thought. Just imagine WWE Evolution 2. We see the return of Ronda Rousey, Paige, debut of Mariah May. Also, in addition to that, you get the Bella Twins. Not only that, but you also have Becky and Bayley. You also have Tiffany Stratton in a massive matchup. You have, Io Sky or Rhea Ripley. Like, they have a star-studded roster. And then also keep in mind, Bianca Belair is set to return to SmackDown this week. So we'll see what they start doing. I think the wheels are currently in motion.
Oh, for sure.
And obviously, it should be exciting. But thank you, Jay Henry, for the super chat. Appreciate it, brother. The Wrestling Old Head dropped a $10 super chat. He says, not sure you got my super chat Friday, but I want to say that as a Cross fan, I now see your vision with him soon. Wait, Excuse me, that was my dyslexia kicking in. He says, I now see your vision and believe they are about to switch gears with him soon. Also, did you notice Scarlett on the ladder? Beautiful. So, if for those who didn't watch WWE Raw last night, there was a segment in which we saw Karrion Kross confront Sami Zayn, which I think is a very unique situation because he continues to be the devil on Sami Zayn's shoulder throughout the last year, and Sami Zayn still hasn't turned yet. I think there is more to that. But of course, we did see Scarlett Bordeaux on the ladder, which I think, knowing Karrion Kross and knowing the WWE, Karrion Kross was also on Ariel Helwani's show where he was holding the green briefcase. Yes, I think there is something to this, but he's not in a qualifying match, so we we will have to see what they do. Who knows? I think this is a fantastic thing. I'm a huge Karrion Kross fan. I think he is a world champion. I think he is set to get that massive push. I think this is all being calculated to manufacture as much interest as possible. And one thing I do have to mention, because I noticed it several times on TV, people are bringing push Karrion signs. So that goes to show you not only is the merch sales a good thing, but also the fact that Karrion Kross is getting people invested to the point. Like this is great. This is fantastic. What's your take on that, Billy?
Yeah, man. I mean, Karrion Kross, we talked about it, last week. Karrion Kross is one of those guys who I think WWE is just going to kind of undermine him a little bit and kind of make everybody mad to ultimately get him shown more on TV. Again, all this is WWE going out there and doing what WWE does and is working the fans, making you guys think that nothing's going on with Karrion Kross when in all reality, everything is going on with Karrion Kross. A huge fan of that, and obviously seeing Scarlett on the ladder and him holding the Money in the Bank briefcase, it feels like signs to come, right? It will be a lot of fun to see. I think Karrion Kross is amazing, and everything that he's done recently has just worked overall tremendously for him. I think he is going to play a major part in the main event scene of Monday Night Raw here very, very soon. Obviously, he's already kind of sprinkling himself into that main event scene, being that, like you said, devil on his shoulder of Sami Zayn. So it's just a lot of fun to watch, man.
My whole thing too, I gotta say, like if you're a wrestling fan, are you not paying attention? Karrion Kross is seriously, like, he is the devil on Sami Zayn's shoulder for the past year. He confronts Sami Zayn. He's looking at Sami Zayn. You have Scarlett on the ladder. Everything that Karrion Kross does is so detailed to the point where, like, there is something being played out here. They leak the contract. He drops the promo. He's constantly changing other wrestlers. He is the reason why so many wrestlers have evolved in the first place. And then you have Scarlett on the Money in the Bank ladder. Karrion Kross is not scheduled to be in the match. Like, what are WWE? What are they going to do? Like, the fans want Karrion Kross to be pushed. I think they need to push him. And I think it is so important that WWE does manufacture this interest because it's working. People are definitely wanting him. Now, the real question is, are they doing this on purpose or do they genuinely not have plans for him? What do you think of that?
I mean, I think WWE has plans for him. I think us talking anything otherwise, they would not have him on TV just to do that. I don't think Triple H is that naive to the fans. I think Triple H hears us, even though he says that, it's all noise to him. I do think he knows that we've appreciated Karrion Kross's work. He, at the end of the day, is another Triple H guy, and I don't think Triple H is going to do wrong by him at the end of the day.
Love it, love it, love it. Shout out to the Wrestling Old Head for the $10 super chat. Phil coming through with another super chat for $9.99. He says, anarchy in the arena to me is why alternatives in pro wrestling is a great thing. Not everything is going to be for you, but wrestling is a buffet at the end of the day. When Bodies played, I popped. That is true. They did play Let the Bodies
They
Hit
were
the
playing
Floor.
a lot of copyrighted music.
Yeah, Tony Khan paying for the license. It's one of the things that he does, which is cool. I mean, I'll give him his props. I think that's a great thing for Tony Khan to kind of add that element to the match. I think anarchy in the arena, I've said it a million times, but I think it's one of those things where so many people are getting the screen time. They're all going out for that major spot. They're all trying to get their stuff in. They're switching the cameras. A lot of big things happen. Look at Swerve getting stapled in the mouth. Like, that's a very big talking point
For sure.
And this is why I say, like, WWE counter programming. if WWE wasn't counter programming, the whole conversation would be anarchy in the arena. But you had Trick Williams beat Joe Hendry for the TNA title, and now that leads to this whole thing where it's like maybe less engagement on that. But for AEW, you just got to keep doing what you're doing. It is a buffet. It may not be my cup of tea. It may not be the kind of interest that I have in professional wrestling. Even if WWE does it, I don't find myself getting overly excited about it. But there are people who watch AEW for this, and I think they just have to continue that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely AEW's thing. I've said it too. Not the biggest fan of those kind of matches because I just, they're hard for me to watch. I've never been a fan of horror movies, if that tells you guys anything. I've always been more of a comedy guy. But at the end of the day, like that is AEW shtick that makes them feel alternative, and we preached for many, many months, many, many years too, that AEW, we wanted them to go back to that alternative feeling, and that is one of the ways that they became that alternative feeling. Now, again, we praise AEW on these, pay-per-views because they do typically do really well when it comes to the pay-per-view, but it's the TV that a lot of us talk about, and we talk about how things are being built, and I think that is where AEW can be a tad bit lackluster, is through the TV. We know that when they go out for pay-per-views, I'm aware of how good all of these guys are at pro wrestling. I know that, and I know they're going to go put on something that is worth watching. It's worth the $50 that you pay. At the end of the day, man, it's just the TV that people tend to complain about. That's where people kind of get lost, like myself, where I have to question, am I going to watch AEW? It's very interesting. So I don't know, man. But that is definitely their shtick. It works for them. Ultimately, if you love the match, hey, love it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Shout out to Phil for the super chat. We got a super chat again from the wrestling old head for $5. He says, if TK is looking at Jon Moxley as his Raven, his Sandman is Paige, and his Dreamer is Darby Allin, which isn't a good sign for Paige winning at All In. I love this super chat. I will say this. I just want to make this very clear. If Hangman Page does not win at All In against Jon Moxley, I promise you guys I will not cover AEW anymore. It's like 100% for certain. I will make that claim right now. Darby Allin left AEW to climb Mount Everest. Congratulations, buddy. You accomplished something that was on your life's bucket list. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you did it safely and you're healthy and all of that, right? It went perfect. Awesome. That is fantastic and amazing. However, you abandoned the company that there was reports several months ago that Darby Allin was in line for a world championship, and you left to go do that. Now Hangman Page, for the last year and a half, has had the most incredible character development on the show. If he loses to Jon Moxley, mark my words, I will not watch AEW any longer, because you are telling me to watch somebody's character development. You are telling me to get invested, and then you're basically shitting on me. The Death Rider storyline has sucked through and through. And if you dare to not have him win and you reward Darby Allin, that sends a terrible message to your locker room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I wasn't sure if you were done there. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit off screen there for a second. They, truth be told, they will do more harm than good. They will mess up everything that they've done if they choose to not put this belt on Hangman. Now, I was also one of those people who questioned it because of everything that Will Ospreay was doing, going on those press runs, talking the way that he was talking about WWE. I was like, oh, don't you think that would be the guy that you want to put the belt on right now? Somebody who is and bleeds AEW. He feels everything that AEW is doing. And for them not to do it, it does make me question, like, are they really... Again, because you have to understand, I've talked about it, on our previous shows prior to AEW has lost a lot of trust within me. I don't trust them. I don't trust them to do the right thing here. And I know a lot of people are going to feel a certain way about that. I love the idea that Hangman won. I truly do. I love the fact that he is the person that is going to All In. My problem with it is I don't know, with everything that you just did with Will Ospreay, if you genuinely want that belt on Hangman or if you want it on Darby Allin. here at Wrestle Dream or wherever you do it to ultimately have him and Will Ospreay fight for the time. I don't know, but regardless of the fact, I'm gonna go off on a whim here and say, as much as I want to believe that AEW will not mess this up, there is a part of me that genuinely thinks there is a chance that they can. And that scares me, because ultimately that is the nail in your coffin. That is what moves people away from your company. That is what messes up everything for you as a company. And I just don't want to see that happen to AEW, because, again, I may have my disagreements with AEW. I may not enjoy them at times. Again, one thing that I've always said and I will continuously say is that I do not want to see them go downhill. And I do think that by doing this, you ultimately are pulling a large chunk of your audience away, even that close audience that you have to you right now. One thing that we discussed before is that, hey, you need to regain that trust in your regular viewers. Then you go get back and get those lapsed fans. Then you go out and you get the marketing, etc., etc. Regardless of that fact, if you do that and you have Hangman lose to Jon Moxley, you ultimately ruin all of that.
Absolutely. Shout out to the Wrestling Old Head for the super chat. Fantastic super chat. Tolino Channel coming through with 100 Indian rupees. He says, with Seth catching up with age, teaming with guys that he feels a threat for him, and turning it into a shield against the likes of Roman Punk is interesting. And so that's what I like, right? Seth Rollins is now paired up with two guys who pose a legitimate threat to his career. And now they become a united front. And I absolutely love the presentation.
Yep. Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I fully agree. They've just ultimately hurt their women's division. They really have, by having Monet win a bunch. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. Like you said, covers earn a loss. But regardless of the fact, it looks like it is just going to be for that championship. So, I mean, we'll see, right? Man.
If they're going to do some sort of battle royale, that's where you put your undercard. But let some of these NXT women, maybe bring in somebody from Marigold as well. Um, do some big stories, like stories without the title on the line, because obviously you're gonna have your title matches, but do some matches with some stories that don't involve the title. And as of this time, as we spoke about earlier on the show, Bailey versus Becky, we don't know if it's gonna be for the title, but we do know that's the plan. So
Yeah.
definitely something to think about there. Shout out to Tolino Channel for the super chat. Justin Toner dropping $5 super chat. He says, I am excited for Evolution 2 because the talent WWE has on NXT, Raw, and SmackDown is incredible. All the women's titles from all brands should be defended. I actually agree with this too. I don't know if WWE will do that, but I think they should have the NXT women's titles, the women's world tag titles, the mid card titles for Raw and SmackDown, and the world championships. I think they all need to be included.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Very simple.
I'm glad to see that everybody's excited for Evolution too. I love
that we're sitting here talking about it.
It's nice because I feel like their hard work has paid off with their women's division.
Agreed. Agreed.
So, shout out to Justin Toner for the $5 super chat. Brian McHattie coming through with a $5 super chat. He says, do you truly believe TK won't follow suit with off-the-wall stupid decisions as he has numerous times in the past? And no, it isn't that comment. Shout out to Brian McAddy. That is very true. It's not that comment. But I don't know if I trust Tony Khan. That's I will be labeled as a person who is anti-AEW until I see AEW make changes. But I think Tony Khan has significantly lost my trust. And I think for as long as he has lost my trust, it's become a problem. It's become very problematic. I would like to think that he doesn't make the wrong call here. I think Hangman has to win the title, right? But It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of seeing what AEW does and how they go about it. And I don't know. I really don't know if I trust Tony Khan, though, and that's probably my biggest gripe.
Yeah, I've said it numerous times. He's lost my trust, and he has like a tad bit of it, like a very small amount left. So I'm just gonna go in and say, hey man, do the right thing, but expect him to do the wrong thing.
Yeah. Brian McCaddy also follows that up with a $2 super chat. He says Monet equals the drizzling poo. Well, he said something else, but for the sake of being a PG news show, gotta beep that out. In the ring, she is the drizzling poo in the ring and the mic. The thing is, I think she's incredibly talented. I think Mercedes is probably one of the best female talents in the industry. I don't like her gimmick. I'm not a fan of it. And I just want to let everybody know that I feel like Sasha Banks was way better. And I think that was very clear. I think if Mercedes was going out, with her Sasha Banks gimmick, I feel like it would be much more enjoyable. I don't think it's a great content for me personally as a fan. Like, I'm just not a big fan of what she's doing. And I think Mercedes has really effectively hurt the women's division since being there. So for her career and for what she's done, she has been a lot better. But I think for me personally, it's not as enjoyable to watch. I'm not really thrilled about watching Sasha Mercedes. I'm not too fond of watching Mercedes versus I'm not too fond of watching Mercedes versus Toni Storm.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree.
So
I did want to mention real fast, because I think we're done here with Super Chats, but I did get one over on my channel, if it's okay to bring that up.
Yep.
Yeah, so I got one over on my channel from Poindexter. He said, what's up, Ango and Billy? Congrats to Trick Williams on being the first WWE star to win a TNA championship. History was made. He said, my prediction is that Trick loses the belt to my guy, Mike Santana. And I'm just kind of intrigued to get your thoughts on, obviously we've seen history made this past weekend.
Well, I'll let you answer, and then I'll feed off of you.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and say that I am actually, it's one thing that I've talked about over on my channel, is that one of the big things is that Mike Santana, me and Ango talked about it a lot. We talked about the Joe Hendry potentially going over to WWE and kind of making that jump, and them needing that guy to kind of take the reign off of Joe Hendry. That guy, I do believe, will be Mike Santana, and I think you kind of already seen the signs at Battleground. You've seen Mike Santana obviously show up. He has a match this weekend, or not this weekend. He has a match tonight, excuse me, on NXT for the first time, which I think is outstanding. And I just have to say this: it's awesome that we got to see some history be made. NXT is just going to be a lot of fun, man, and I think people should get excited for what is to come. But yes, I do agree that Trick ultimately loses that title to Mike Santana.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think the whole situation with Mike Santana being involved is awesome. Trick Williams finally, he made history, bro. He's the third outsider to win the TNA World Championship. This guy's incredibly talented. There's clearly a story being played out as well with Carlos Silva, the president of TNA, being shown with a look of disgust. So I thought that was really unique too. And just a really good thing. Joe Hendry needed to drop the belt, bro. It was starting to get stale.
For sure.
I think everybody heard me rant about Joe Hendry the other day, and respectfully, I just think that's kind of one of those things that needs to happen. So, I'm glad for the change. I think it was a great moment, and we'll see what happens. Right? This is a time for everybody to start tuning into TNA. Right?
Yep.
This is the time. Start tuning in. If you're not watching, start watching.
Right.
Cool. Shout out to what was the commenter?
Shout out Poindexter, man. Thank you for the $10 super chat.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude today's episode of The Ango Show Live. It is a brand new era. We will be live Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. As you guys can tell, there's been a different format. It looks like everything was running relatively smoothly. Some small things here and there could be changed and adjusted, but I want to say special thanks to everybody who has joined us today on our live show. And of course, Billy TKO. Billy is a YouTube content creator who does watch-alongs on all of WWE, AEW, TNA, all that good stuff. So if you guys aren't following TikTok and YouTube, make sure you guys check them out on Billy TKO. Of course, the Ango Show Live will continue tomorrow with more stories and more conversations just like this. Shout out to everybody that helped us reach our super chat goal today. You guys are absolutely incredible. And thank you to all of our members who make this show possible. If you guys aren't a member on the show, please consider becoming one. It starts at $1.99 a month. The Ango Show Live will continue to evolve. I've promised change. The change is here, and I really greatly appreciate everybody. If you guys enjoy this new format, if you guys enjoy the new way the show is produced, please let us know in the chat and in the comments.